everyone. It's Dr. Erin here, one of the good doctors of Abbey Research, and I'm here with today's Good Doctors Diagnose for Wednesday, August 19th. And you may have seen from our YouTube channel already that we're going to spend a lot of time during the next few months talking about the 100-year anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment, which guaranteed women's suffrage or the right to vote here in the United States. And yesterday just happened to be said centenary of the ratification of that amendment. So the 18th of August was when the state of Tennessee became the 36th state to ratify the amendment. Next week, we'll also be celebrating National Women's Equality Day, which is on the 26th and marks the 100-year anniversary from when it was signed into law by the Secretary of State in 1920. So lots to celebrate here, and we're seeing lots of events taking place commemorating this historic achievement for women's rights in the United States. But, and I say that with a but, Dr. Kristen and I are both firm believers that suffrage in 1920 should always come with an asterisk. And there's a lot of hard truths about the period in our history of the fight for women's suffrage that don't often get taught. There are truths that get mythologized or changed in order to, fit into the myth of Americanness and the American nation. So it's important to remember, even though we can celebrate the accomplishments of suffrage in 1920, there were a lot of things unfinished in that moment. And so, the most important asterisk that goes with the 19th Amendment is the fact that although it did guarantee that you could not lose your enfranchisement of voting on the basis of sex, we had lots of other ways of preventing women of color from voting, including the newly adopted Jim Crow laws in the southern states, and a lot of other discriminatory practices that kept women of color, Black women, Latina women, Native and Indigenous women from voting and achieving that full right for a very long time. In fact, it's not really until we see the Voting Rights Act of 1965 that Black women specifically get full enfranchisement. So that's always really important to remember. There was a lot of inherent and systemic racism throughout the suffrage movement. And a lot of times Black suffragettes were, obscured, written out of the narrative, pushed to the back of the literal line during protest marches in 1913. And while we heroicize the white women who were part of the fight for the right to vote, it's also important to remember that a lot of them didn't think Black women were deserving of that right because of their race. So there's a lot of hard truths that we face, and centenary celebrations are a great opportunity to kind of re-examine the way we tell the stories of our history. We talked about this in our review of the And Nothing Less podcast that we dropped yesterday, and the blog will be out tomorrow, and talking about, the way we tell the story of history and the way we talk about the events of our past in a way that shapes a national narrative. And we've certainly done that around women's suffrage. But this is your GDD reminder to always look for that asterisk and make sure to say, what about everyone else? Because there's still a lot of women in this country who have not reached freedom and equality, white women in a lot of ways, but certainly disproportionately women of color and other marginalized groups. So it's important to take this moment out to celebrate women's suffrage in the United States and suffrage celebrations around the world, but also to use that motivation to recognize that we still have a long way to go to reach equality. And as the popular saying goes, I'm hearing it more and more these days, no one is free until everyone is free. So the fight goes onward. We have a long way to go, but enjoy the celebrations about suffrage. Learn what you can. There was a lot I wasn't told, so go out there, find some articles or some videos or some podcasts and teach yourself about suffrage. But that is all for the Good Doctors Diagnose for this week. We will see you guys next week. Take care.